So,
Wow, so you know.
Thank you. It is 5:30, so we're going to call our meeting to order.
You've
We're going
been
to call the
dragging
meeting
it
to
around for
order.
a while.
It's 5:30. Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate you being here for our council meeting today. Our opening ceremony today will be Jill Anderson. Thanks so much for coming today. And when you're done, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a little short, so I have to move the microphone down, but, so thank you so much for the invitation to come share a little information with you tonight. I want to start by just thanking Mayor Danes and the City Council, and I see Assistant Chief here, but Chief Jensen, with what I'm going to share tonight, I think it's only appropriate that I thank Chief Jensen for the leadership and all of your leadership within the city and providing that for Logan City. As you all know, Logan City has been identified or named as one of the safest communities in America. And I'm blessed, I feel blessed, I know you all feel blessed to live in such a safe and wonderful community. Unfortunately, for many of residents in our community, the most dangerous place for them is their very own home. And CAPSA has been in this community providing services for more than 45 years. So this year, we're celebrating 45 years of service to the Cache Valley community and Logan City. And just to share a little bit of information with you about, since it is our 45 years, I want to share, and many of you probably know this story, but a little bit about our founding, how we were founded. CAPSA was originally known as the Cache Valley Rape Crisis Team. There were several sexual assaults that happened at USU and community members, and I think this speaks, our founding story speaks to why our community is so great. Several community members got together and started volunteering on this rape crisis team. They wanted to support victims. And it was shortly after they got started that law enforcement started to use the team for domestic violence as well. And some of you may know Thad and Jenny Box. But Jenny came home one day. Thad was the dean of the College of Natural Resources, and Jenny came home one day and she said, "We're going to start sheltering families in our own home." And Thad said, "The only reason I agreed with Jenny to do that is because I thought 1 or 2 families a year, we can handle that." Well, they had 3 families that law enforcement brought to them in the first week. And Thad said, "I'm a pretty slow learner, but I figured out pretty quickly that domestic violence was a problem here in the Valley." And so CAPSA has just grown over the years based on what survivors are telling us they need. I want to share with you what's happened with our organization in the last 5 years, and then the last year, which we all know has transformed our lives, all of our lives. In the last 5 years, we looked at, 5 years ago, we served 568 individuals. And before I share more information, it's important to understand that there's 2 aspects to our organization. There's the services. We respond and provide services for victims. But we're also committed to prevention education. And so we kind of have those 2 arms of our organization. But 5 years ago, we served 568 individuals. Last year, we served 1,658. So triple in the last 5 years. Our education department 5 years ago presented 342 presentations to 6,000 participants. Last year, 747 presentations to over 14,000 participants. In working to meet that tripling of requests for services, our staff has gone from 17 staff members to 57. We're no insignificant small employer in the community. We never shut our doors. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We never get to turn out the lights. We never get to shut the doors. In addition to that, we have built or acquired 21 housing units. And I know you all know the housing crisis in our community, but across our country. And it's no different here in Cache Valley. The largest homeless population in our community are victims of domestic violence. That's not to minimize the unmet needs for the general homeless population, but by meeting the needs of those who are homeless due to domestic violence, we're having a significant impact. During this last year, domestic violence has been called the shadow pandemic to the pandemic. When you think about the tactics that abusers use during normal times, isolation from family and friends, monitoring activities and movement, control of limiting resources, strict rules of behavior, many of us viewed all of those things as ways to keep ourselves and those we love safe. But for families experiencing domestic violence, it was a way for abusers to escalate the tactics that they used during normal times. And so we knew as an organization that we were going to see an increase. We watch our sister organizations across the country during natural disasters and other times of crisis, their numbers climb. So we knew we were going to see it, but we had no idea the actual impact that this was going to have on our organization. Overnight, March, April, May, when it first hit, 112% increase in the number of calls coming to our crisis line. So we have systems and staffing set up for many years, averaging about 1,200 calls a quarter. We're now handling over 2,500 calls a quarter. And when you think about a typical business, you'd be excited to have 112% increase overnight. Chairman Anderson, if you had 112, you'd be excited. But that means revenue for you. You can get resources, supplies, increase employees. For us, we saw the opposite. We can't fundraise now the way we used to. We have more expenses. We can't hire more staff. And our team, I'm really proud of the way our team responded and continues to respond to this escalated state that we now live in. We use the term long COVID sometimes in our conversations about this. But what we don't talk about is long domestic violence, because this is going to have impact long-term on the families that we serve. So tonight, we have 18 women, 21 children, and 5 men in our shelter tonight. In addition to that, we have 26 families out in our housing units. We have those we own. We have what we call scattered site, where they go into the community, find an apartment, and we help subsidize their rent. So thank you for letting me share a glimpse into what we do every day. You see some of these stories in the news, but for the most part, our community doesn't know their stories. Our community doesn't see the impact. We're happy to be here to help, and we're grateful for the city's support to do that. One of the things I didn't share with you is, in addition to the increased request for help, we had to spread people out. We spent more than $120,000 last year on hotel bills in order to spread people out to keep them safe. And we couldn't have done it without support from the city. So thank you for that contribution. I'm happy to answer any questions about CAPSA later, but with that, if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks so much for sharing that information, Jill. We appreciate what you do. Growth can overwhelm you. You know the feeling. All right. I'm open for a motion for acceptance of minutes and approval of the agenda.
If you don't approve it, can we go home?
I don't think Teresa will let us know.
I will make a motion for acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Our 2021 regular meeting schedule are the first and third Tuesdays at 5:30, and our next meeting is August 17th of 2021. It's coming up in 2 weeks. At this point, questions and comments for the mayor and council. Anyone who's wishing or would like to comment on any item that is not otherwise on the agenda may address the council at this point by stepping to the microphone and giving his or her name and address for the record. Please try and limit your comments to 3 minutes at the most, and that's your opportunity if you'd like to address the council and the mayor. Not seeing any comments. All right, let's move forward. Mayor and staff reports. Mayor Danes.
All right, and I do have one really exciting announcement to make before I move on to the agenda item. This is not on the agenda because it was just finalized on Friday, but I think you will be extremely thrilled with this. And I am simply going to read the press release that we will be releasing right after this meeting, and we'll send you a copy. The headline is, Mayor announces $1 million gift to Logan City for the Center Block Plaza. Woo! The City of Logan is excited to announce a gift of $1 million from the Jim and Carol Lobb Family Foundation and Cache Valley Electric Company, which will feature a stage for entertainment, an ice rink for wintertime skating, and summer water feature. Mayor Holly Gaines said, we express our deep gratitude to the Lobb family for this extraordinarily generous gift. The free public plaza will create a gathering place to draw families and individuals downtown year-round to enjoy the amenities, entertainment, activities, and events. This gift is a significant investment in our historic downtown, and research shows downtown plazas return great dividends in terms of both revitalization and economic development. Jim Law made the following comment regarding the gift. We are pleased to partner with Mayor Gaines and Logan City to give back to our community in a way that will benefit our fellow citizens and make our city an even more beautiful, interesting, and better place to live. Carol, Mark, Eric, and I view this not as a contribution, but rather an investment in the community that has been so good to our family for over 100 years. We recognize the hard work and dedication of our current and former employees of Cache Valley Electric Company, who over its 106-year history have helped make this investment possible. So, on a $4.3 million project, we have a $1 million gift, and there will be more to come. We've got some more that we will announce, but we just wholeheartedly thank them for their investment in downtown, and we're really thrilled about that. So
That's wonderful.
I think the Lobbs have shown themselves to invest in the entire community, and this is just one great example.
If you're listening, Jim, thank you so much.
I invited them to attend tonight, but they actually are out of town. But again, I've expressed my gratitude, and maybe council would like to send them a joint letter or something. But
Absolutely.
very, very exciting news for our community.
Yep.
They have been very generous in many aspects of our community.
All right, the next item on the agenda is board appointments. Those of you that are here may or may not know that we have a small amount, I think about $22,000 or $26,000 annually, that we provide to local arts organizations through a grant process. Again, we provide a lot of money for recreation programs, and so this has been a way to, provide some small grants for the arts organizations in our community. We have a couple of city council members that serve on that committee and some citizens, so we have sent you resumes for 3 members. They meet once a year, and we'll be doing that later this month. Ann T. Geary, Ann Schiffer, and Richard Steele are who I'm recommending, and I'm asking council to ratify to serve on the Fine Arts Committee.
How long is that appointment, Holly?
Typically, it is for a year. We've often requested that people serve for a couple of years, so often we ask them to, again, where it's only one meeting a year, Typically, they'll serve for 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
I know Ann, Gary very well, and Richard, and I've been impressed with Ann Schiffer's resume, and so I would be very pleased to move that we accept this recommendation, I guess.
And I'm happy to second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of ratification of our nominations for the committee appointments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the great news.
That is exciting, isn't it?
That's very
Really,
exciting.
really exciting.
All right, Vice Chair Simmons, will you give us an update on the Planning Commission, please?
Well, the Planning Commission had 2 items on its agenda. One was a rezone of some single-family area in the south end of town to become multifamily. The developer continued that to the August 26th meeting. I think the neighborhood is, they've received several letters opposing it. So we'll see how that goes when it actually comes before the commission. And the remainder of the time was spent in sort of an open workshop on the accessory dwelling unit legislation that came through the legislature this past year and how we're going to institute it in the city of Logan. They will be having a hearing on the 12th to decide what their recommendation might be coming to council.
Is that a public meeting?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And they were given 6 different scenarios to review and determine which one they would prefer to implement. And their initial feeling about it was they thought we should do it citywide. So I know that Amy and the mayor and Kimber and I worked pretty hard to allow Utah State University and the other university communities in the state to have a little more latitude in restricting that area. And I'm hopeful that they will come to understand that that's important. So.
I think we all wrote a lot of letters in January.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's true. And so I encourage all of us to participate in that meeting or to write letters to the commission if you have a particular viewpoint that you would like considered.
We had the Hillcrest Neighborhood Organizing Committee meeting last night, and so we brought this forward, that just to get a feel for what the Hillcrest community's thoughts and feelings were on ADUs. And I would encourage any of you, if you've got neighborhood council meetings coming up, or even just speaking with their leadership about what the legislation is. I was grateful that Erin was there to help clarify some of the legalities of actually the legislation, but it's not an easy question. It's not an easy issue. And I think we do have issues of housing affordability and things like that, but we also have some of the concerns about neighborhood preservation. So if you're not familiar with it, I would strongly encourage, as Jeannie said, to come to the meeting next Thursday, but also maybe reach out to your neighborhoods to find out what their feelings are about it as well, because ultimately it's not just the 5 of us, it's what people in those neighborhoods and in our community think is the appropriate thing for Logan.
Yeah, I've spoken to Adams and they're very concerned because they feel that they already absorb an awful lot of the multifamily ADU style multifamily in the community today. And they're very concerned that they've tried really hard to preserve their community, their neighborhood, and they see this as another threat to that stability. So it is a big deal, and I don't know whether the legislature is going to get pushed back and they'll change their mind next year. I have no idea.
I've had a couple citizens come to me. If they were to go to that meeting on the 12th, are they going to review a lot of the information they went over through the workshop so that they can become a little bit more familiar, or should they go somewhere else?
All of the options are available online. They were part of the packet. So I would encourage anyone who is interested to look at those options, even though they're very difficult to read. But they will go through it all, again, pretty thoroughly, and it will be a public hearing, and then it does come to us. So it has a few more pieces to the cycle. But one of the big restrictions is that if we don't develop our own ordinances, I don't know what, it's sort of like a package, that we have to, the state will impose the one that they've chosen.
By October 3rd.
Yeah.
So do you know when the minutes from the planning commission usually are available? Because it might be helpful for people just to even read the minutes.
That's what I was
I don't know when she usually gets them out. If it had been Debbie, I would have said day after, but.
If they're not out already, they'll be out within a matter of days. Generally, it's within 3 days usually that the minutes are online.
So I have not, Amanda hasn't sent me the minutes yet. And it was last week, so.
Just so you know, she doesn't usually send out the minutes. She'll send them out with the packet, but they're usually online long before it goes out in the packet, so.
Oh, she's been sending me just
the minutes.
an email that says.
That was a week ago. Was that
Week
just
ago
last
Thursday.
Thursday or?
It was a week ago Thursday.
So usually on the tab for the planning commission, they have the agendas and the minutes and that.
Right. So I would encourage the community to voice their opinion because it could be a remarkably large change. And it could be also, the legislation stipulates that the house has to be owner occupied and the ADU has to be within the 4 walls of the house. And that in itself could be a relative nightmare to enforce. So we just, it's just a nice little can of worms that was given to us by the state legislature.
The other issue that could be, problematic in neighborhoods is the state legislation says you can only require 1 additional parking spot per ADU. Now we know you can have 3 unrelated persons occupy, a dwelling unit. So again, if it happened to be student housing in a neighborhood, our experience has been that every student has a car. So that's another potential impact to be considered.
All right. Thanks for sharing that, Jeannie.
Okay,
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the invitation for everyone to come.
please do.
Please come. Let us know.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
In front of you, you have a card from Patrick. And if you have Patrick Jenkins, I was remiss in not bringing you the little flyer. If you come on Wednesday, the 18th, to the airport, to the old airport runway, you can drive a bus. It's called the CBTD Road EO.
So we don't need to go get a license before they let
Because
us
we're not on the
back.
street.
You didn't see me respond immediately when I saw
No,
that.
buses they're expensive. Do they really want to train people?
Well, it's a runway. It's a straight line.
Not much to this.
As soon as I saw the invitation, I responded immediately. It's like, wow, that sounds like fun.
And they're also going to share with you the progress how far they are along in the process of building the new facility in North Logan. So that too is pretty exciting and rather intense for them to work on. So please come.
Sounds good. Get your driving gloves out, Tom. So.
Oh, that'd be fun. How fast do they go?
I don't know, but they don't go really fast on the street.
The
So.
one that we took down to the compost facility went 75 miles an hour.
75.
Yeah, it went
That's
fast.
second gear.
All right, let's move into our action items. Oh, yes, go ahead, Ernesto.
With regards of the ADUs, can we make an effort to have at least the most important parts of the information in Spanish. I can see that that would be very beneficial to a lot of our constituents here. No,
Do you think that's possible, Teresa?
Sorry, could you say it again?
They have the ADU information in Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
At least the bill.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever we can, that would be great.
Thank you.
And the bill just posted along with the regular minutes and everything else on the planning commission website, correct?
Yeah, we can have
Yes,
Esme do that.
It's a matter of, can this, we get it all translated? That's gonna be voluminous.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Maybe we just do a
Could I ask Ernesto? You raised a great point to get these translated. Do you have any sense for the readership in that Spanish-speaking community?
I think if we make it known that the information is available in Spanish, there will be some readership. It's hard for me to.
I know it's hard to measure.
Yeah, it's hard to measure. But one of the big issues has been that even if we have something in Spanish, people don't know that it's available in Spanish. So with this specific issue, the ADUs, I can see that we should make an effort to have at the very least the most important parts in Spanish and let them know that it's available.
I would suspect that the state's already translated the bill into Spanish, you would think.
And I know like maybe the bill is maybe hard for the average person to digest it, but whatever our ordinance ends up being, I think it'd be beneficial to have the key points in Spanish.
Do you get feedback from any persons, any Spanish-speaking persons of, I read this or such and such?
Personally,
Yeah.
not necessarily, but once in a while I read about people just not understanding things that are being discussed and or getting in trouble because
They didn't understand what we were discussing. Right.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ernesto. Thank you.
If there's a possibility, could we put something on the website that it says that we have it whenever it's available, whatever is available in Spanish? Okay. Because I think that is a piece of it as well, so that people know.
All right. Let's move on to our action items. We've got a public hearing for Resolution 21-40. Mayor Daines, would you like to share this with us?
You know, I think we went over it in quite extensive detail 2 weeks ago, so unless there are any questions on that, I mean, the short summary is basically the state was keeping $100,000 approximately of our sales tax revenue to go towards the state homeless fund. Now CAPSA has a shelter that qualifies for that. So their proposal was, could we get some of that to help fund it because it's now not going to the state? And the proposal was to split that. So we'll keep 50, they'll have 50. It'll be made in 2 payments. So this is appropriation for the first $25,000. This is, of course, assuming it's all approved through the state, but that's the proposal.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone who would like to comment or has questions about Resolution 21-40, now is your opportunity. Not seeing anyone come forward, let's bring it back to the council for action.
I move we approve Resolution 21-40.
I wholeheartedly second that, as I think Ernesto does. I jumped in quicker.
And I think everyone was going to do that, so we won't have any discussion then. All those in favor of Resolution 21-40, please say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for coming, Jill. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay. You do not have to.
And thank you for that excellent presentation at
Yes.
the beginning, Jill. That was,
Absolutely.
it breaks my heart that this is increasing at this rate or at all. I think that we could reduce it, but it's really heartbreaking.
We work on that too, but yeah, us too.
Okay, moving on to Resolution 21-41. It is a mouthful. Richard, Rich, I'm going to leave it up to you.
I won't read all of these, but there are a whole bunch of grants and
Very
reimbursements.
well in your absence,
Okay.
Yes, we spent an extra 15 minutes on
A
it.
whole bunch of grants and reimbursements. Mostly they're categories of RAPS grants that we've received and what we're going to use those on, and state and federal grants and what we've received. Then there are two items, they're reimbursements. One is for tree planting and the other is for the insurance recovery from a vehicle. Other than that, I'll answer any questions that either you or the public may have.
Any questions for Rich while we have his full attention?
Like you said, we covered it.
Oh, we covered it very thoroughly.
We did receive information from Mayor Daines today that one of the items we discussed,
Yes.
that our workshop has been changed. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, because that is a change on what we discussed 2 weeks ago as far as the underpass under 10th West.
And again, the amount of the pop split funds hasn't changed. We always use those for sort of general grant categories that the Parks Department received. Due to some complications with, as we're learning about the engineering requirements to put that proposed wall on the 10th West pedestrian underpass that's part of the Trapper Trail, that is just getting much more expensive and complicated than we anticipated. So we will not have the money to do that. And also the bid for the pickleball lights came in a little more expensive than we thought. So the thought is to just allocate the funds so we can at least complete the lights at the pickleball courts, and then we'll have to continue to do a little more research to even figure out what the funding will be. Did I summarize that accurately, Russ? Anything you'd like to add? So again, just one of those projects that's getting a lot more complicated and expensive than anticipated.
Indicated that was what UDOT was asking for, a little bit more engineering and more
Right.
planning.
Anytime you get into UDOT structures, we've learned, there's a lot of engineering required, and that tends to have a big price tag to go with it. So it's a problem we'd like to get solved, but it's not going to be immediate.
Very good. Any other questions? No. All right, let's open this up for public comment. If you have a comment on Resolution 21-41, now is your opportunity. Not seeing any comment, let's bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move acceptance of 2141, and I'll just say is how many areas of the community I think are blessed with these grants and this action, and it's a broad area. So I'm proud to see this brought forward, and so I'll move that Resolution 2141 is approved.
And so the 2141 we're looking at includes that change in the distribution of funds. I just want to make sure that we're voting. What was that?
The only thing that changes is the verbiage,
The verbiage.
and that changes even after you pass it sometimes, so it's not a big deal.
Sorry, all right. And I'll second the Resolution 2141.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Your question was answered, Amy. Very good. All right, all those in favor of Resolution 21-41, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, resolution carries.
And I would just like to compliment our staff because they do make an extra effort to apply for many of these grants. And again, it comes back to benefit our citizens and taxpayers.
I would say as a relatively new member of council, that's the one thing that has stood out the most to me is how hard our staff works to go find funds, whether it's state or federal, to bring those here to our community. So it's very, very appreciated. Way to go, guys, gals, everyone. I'll leave anyone out. So. All right. Public hearing for disposal of significant parcel of property. Kimber.
Yes, so this is just a technical requirement. In this case, it's technical. Anytime we dispose, sell, or trade a significant piece, we're required to hold a public hearing. In this situation, we're actually exchanging with Centeva. Technically, it's called High Clone Laboratories LLC as a property owner, but that's Centeva. They really wanted the piece that we had acquired for our power substation next to their campus, and we indicated to them if they could acquire a piece that was our first choice to begin with, but we couldn't reach a price. He wasn't really willing to sell. We told them we would exchange, and so they were able to acquire that for a lot more than we paid for our piece, but we're trading the two parcels. They're similar in size, and this one is closer to our transmission line, so it works a lot better for us. So no money's exchanging hands, we're just trading deeds.
Okay, win-win for everyone.
Yes.
No action by the council, but
Just open it up for the public, yep.
All right. So if you would like to make a comment on this transaction on properties, now is your opportunity. This is a public hearing. All right, not seeing anyone comment. Going once, twice.
Okay,
Go ahead.
we've complied with that requirement.
Very good, thank you. Let's move into our workshop items. Budget adjustment for fiscal year 2021 through 2022, resolution 21-42. Rich.
This is a request to appropriate funds that were donated, I believe 2 years ago, well, a year ago, that will cover the cost of the cruise-in special event that was held this past July. Prior year, we spent $4,500 of those funds. We're now spending $4,940 by comparison. And yeah, just request to reimburse ourselves with the funds that were donated to us a year ago.
So the cruise-in is paying for some of that, are they not?
The donation that was acquired has covered the cost for the last 2 years, and I think there's $600 left or something like that. Not very much, $550.
So that was the intent when, I think you'll remember the scenario, they were upset about the fact that every other organization does pay for police and public works services, and we switched things out so they would be charged that as well. I did help them get a sponsor of $10,000 that we estimated would cover 2 years worth of costs, which it did. So yeah, they've been able to hopefully plan for that cost. They've had a couple of years to adjust. They're welcome to go back to that sponsor. I hope they've been showing that sponsor what kind of recognition they get. But again, we provided that help for them through a sponsor for 2 years, and look forward to see what they'll do next year.
Great, okay.
Any other questions for Rich? All right, thank you. Resolution 21-43. Kimber.
Yes, this is to renew our franchise agreement with Comcast. We do this every 5 years, ideally. It's essentially the same agreement that we've had in the past, and it's the same agreement that most all cities in Utah have with Comcast. It's in your packet. It could be tweaked a little bit with some updating of the federal statutes that are in there, but for the most part, it's going to look very similar to what's in your packet.
Do we have similar contracts with all those other people that keep pulling pipe and wire and stuff under them?
Yeah, but it's under a different statute or a different ordinance, so those are primarily done under our telecommunications franchise ordinance. Cable is specifically excluded out of telecommunication, so different ordinance. The council is required to approve all of those outside of telecommunications. You basically put all the requirements in the ordinance. So on the telecommunication franchise agreements, generally we just do those at staff level, but anything outside of telecommunications comes to the council if it's a franchise agreement. So like Questar, Comcast.
Okay, so this is like a random question, this is probably not exactly related, but you walk around town and there'll be a bunch of digging and holes and pipes, and how do we know that those people are legally allowed to do all of that?
And how do we know they clean up their mess? I think Paul I constantly harangue Paul on this topic. Would you like him to come forward?
Yeah, because there's like another group that's not the group that we had sort of issue with earlier, that's up by the temple digging big holes. And so I don't know what they're
Well,
doing.
he's coming up, though. The short answer is even though they have a franchise agreement, they're still required to get a right-of-way permit. Now, that doesn't mean they don't violate the terms of the right-of-way permit, especially when it comes to Well, I mean, that's an enforcement issue. I mean, we have those issues on a regular basis, and as long as we're a city with right-of-way, we will always have those type of issues. But they must have a right-of-way permit if they're working in the right-of-way.
Okay.
Ditto. No, and to answer your question, how to find out, I just recommend calling Sharon, our Public Works Administrative Assistant, and say, who holds a permit at this address? And if they don't have one, we go visit them and say, you need a permit. And if they do have one, we do our best to keep them within the requirements of it.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Do they, and we will, like, if I owned a fiber optic company and I wanted to pull fiber optic cable in Logan, Utah, I could do that, right?
If you had a right-of-way permit to do the work, yes.
And what do I have to do to get one?
Fill out an application and submit all the required documentation.
And pay a fee?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just asking that question for future.
And we require that of any work done in the right of way, whether it's a homeowner, a road contractor, telecommunications, any work done in the right of way, we require to get a right of way permit.
Okay.
And if you recall, you recently, maybe 2 years ago, raised the deposit that's required on the right-of-way permit.
Right.
It was like 500 or 600, and it's been raised. I can't remember the amount, Paul.
It depends on what type of work you're doing, if you're disturbing the asphalt or not, there's different rates, but the deposit is $1,000.
And that's, you pay 1,000 one time and you can pull power out, pull stuff everywhere?
No, it's
Yeah, it's
permit.
per permit.
Okay.
And there's a lot of nuances with that, because one permit could be 5 miles long, but we also often look at like how many road cuts are there.
Okay,
And we'll take a deposit for each one, that type of thing.
okay, okay.
Paul, the multiple holes that Jean was referring to, were they moving ahead of this contract that we're approving? In other words, were they moving without or prior to the?
I don't know if she was referring to a Comcast project
It
or
wasn't
not.
Comcast. It was like
Yeah.
11
That's
something.
different.
And Comcast had a franchise agreement previous to this, they're just renewing it.
Yeah, they currently have a franchise agreement, and even if the one that we currently have expires, under federal law, it becomes a month-to-month. So there is something in place to cover Comcast. But I think the one you're referring to was one that was brought maybe a month or two ago.
Yeah. So, and one more question, and then I'll be done. So, I had someone ask me if we would be friendly to someone wanting to run fiber, and I said, we have a process, you just fill out a permit and pay a fee. But then there was a comment about, well, that doesn't allow you to put it on the poles.
That is true.
And I don't know what that means.
As I understand, the Light and Power Department also has a pole attachment agreement.
And Mark's here.
that they would have to.
Yeah, he's giving us a thumbs up.
Was that
So-
fair?
That is true.
So, do we own all the poles?
Most.
Most, not all.
Okay. And how do you,
He doesn't want to come up here, come on.
Before you leave, Paul, thanks for putting the yield sign back in the problem category.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, that was.
He couldn't get his car started after it started.
so how do we know which poles Logan City are Logan Cities and which ones aren't?
How do you tell or how do I tell? Well, we have an inventory of them. We also have a poll number
Okay.
A majority of them are ours. We have them mapped in the GIS system. Have them tested to see if they're good or not good. But there are a few that belong to telecommunication companies here and there.
And how do they get to put those in?
I don't think, since I've been here, we've not allowed a telecommunications company to put a pole in.
Okay.
We don't allow them to do it now, but they're just kind of grandfathered locations.
Okay. All right. Just I was trying to answer questions.
I could go all night on telecommunication companies.
More complicated than that. We do allow some poles. We have to under federal law. There's some poles. One that comes to mind, but it was actually put on USU property.
Oh.
On, what was that, across from the cemetery, if you recall. It ended up being on USU property, but they do have a right to put poles on a right-of-way, but everything's done through a right-of-way permit, so. And they have that new technology, what's it called, small cell or small satellite?
Yeah, it's for 5G. They got to put antennas.
So, but I know even on some of UDOT light poles, that type of thing, they'll put them on those.
They're a lot like us. They want to go underground if they're doing any kind of new. Typically, I shouldn't say that always, but.
Question. There's that triangle that is at an intersection where we can't put things that obstruct vision. Do the poles have to obey that?
Yes.
They do? Okay.
Yeah, the sight distance triangle has to be obeyed by everybody, and that's a safety issue.
Except at 3rd South and 1st East.
Well, I'm not saying that it's always been complied with. There's no exemption for telecommunication companies to put obstructions in the sight distance triangle.
Sorry.
And that was a big oops.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Sorry. I know how much you like to come talk to us.
And he's like, and we were talking about cable television, why am I up here?
So glad that you came.
It just diverged.
Okay, do we have any other questions about Resolution 2143? Apparently not. All right. Do we have any other council considerations?
I have one thing I'd like to share.
Please, Amy.
For those of you who may not be aware, the Cache Valley Veterans Association was able to open and move into their new space on 200 East, close to 1800 North this past week. So I think it's pretty great that we have this service here in our valley. So just, it's going to provide VA benefits and claims, employment services, education and training, peer support, homeless and housing services, service animal referrals, essential workshops, homeless transition case management, housing accommodations, opportunities to serve, to volunteer. So if you haven't had a chance to get out there, I would encourage you to go and just look at the space. It's a great drop-in space too. They encourage any veterans to come in there. I think, those who have served our nation always deserve our best and our support. And I think this is a great step that our community at large has taken to pull that together. So Department of Workforce Services, and I know CAPS has been involved with this project as well. But if you weren't able to make it to their open house, I just encourage you, I'd encourage everybody in the community to just go and see this really great community resource that's been pulled together by Cache Valley for Cache Valley.
Very good.
Anything from the Hillcrest meeting that we ought to know about?
You're welcome. We spent a lot of time discussing the pros and cons of the ADU legislation. That was kind of a high point, but we also were really fortunate. Paul Lindhart came and did a presentation to the neighborhood just on the impacts that any of the public works might have. So talked about 12th East and a planned renovation of that over the next 3 years, was it, Mayor Daines? That 12th East is on target.
Well, it just depends on funding.
But to maybe put some bike lanes in there, just to do some general improvements to 12. But this was the committee, not a whole neighborhood council. So it was a committee meeting that.
So is there any responsibility on the developers to do any improvements on 12th East? Because we're having a lot of development along that area. Do they have to? I mean, I know you have to build a road if you don't have a road there, but I don't know what their responsibility is beyond if the road's already there.
Are you referring to like the foothill lofts area and the new subdivision that's going in? They will need to put in sidewalk, curb and gutter. Again, I don't know if there are extensions to the road there.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have to do the typical development. And just one other thing I did confirm after the meeting, they had wanted to have, to see the plans on October 4th from the consultant for the first draft of the new nature park design. So Russ Akina did confirm that the consultant will be there October 4th. So I think they'll have a larger neighborhood meeting that night again. So they'll have some concept plans and ask for more feedback and continue through that process.
But that too is dependent on funding, right?
Exactly, right. And although you may, Russ did mention that we probably need to bring a resolution to council to appropriate some impact fees to help cover the design cost. Again, we're only in the design phase right now.
But I do also think that we need to, since it's gonna be so large, it'll be the largest park in Logan. And I think it probably is more of a regional park than it is a neighborhood park.
And it will obviously need to probably be phased given the costs. And again, the first step is to at least get the design, and then you can come up with a budget, and then you have to figure out over time how to fund it, which is a slower process.
For now, bear bonds. For now. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Anyone have anything else for our council business?
Tom's review turned us
I know Tom's just.
nobody say anything else.
You've exceeded the shortest meetings.
I know, darn it. Yeah, well, I'll survive. Well, thank you all for being here. I believe all of our business is done. Our meeting is adjourned for tonight. Thank you. Excellent.